I'm Georgia, I'm co-founder. I've got Nathan on here as well, my partner at Sustainability Partnerships. Because there's quite a few of you that I've seen before, I'm not going to give the whole background, and I wanted to give a bit more introduction to the actual reason that we're running this event specifically today. So I'm actually going to share my screen and go straight into some slides. Bear with me 1 second. If panelists can give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen. Perfect. So, unless you weren't aware, it's actually Green Building Week this week, from the 21st through to tomorrow, the 24th, and that's why we wanted to run this event this week. We wanted to talk specifically about the actual buildings within healthcare in the UK. So, a bit of an introduction to Green Building Week. It's run by the Green Building Council. Absolutely recommend you go and have a look at their site. It's all about building resilience. So it's about future-proofing, and it's about creating buildings that are ecologically and economically sustainable for the future. So it's the largest campaign to accelerate sustainable buildings everywhere. It's organised by the World Green Building Council. It's led by the global network of 70 building councils and 36,000 members. They see resilience as important because 38% of global energy-related carbon emissions are responsible by buildings, and 50% of all extracted materials from the earth go into our built environment. 4 billion people are vulnerable to risks, and 91% of people who live worldwide in areas of air pollution. By 2050, the world's building stock is going to double from where it is now. So that's going to increase the impact on the construction sector significantly. And then also, obviously, the demand on natural resources, given that we're, extracting all those raw materials from the earth, and then obviously that then accelerates climate change, and it just creates unhealthy buildings that are affecting everyone's livelihoods. So the World Building Council, they look to embrace a holistic approach to sustainability, and they believe that we have to work towards systemic changes that provide powerful solutions to climate change, which improve human health, equity, and drive a circular, regenerative economy. So when we reached out to these guys, when we found out that this is what they were doing this week, we were like, yeah, okay, we definitely want to be involved with this. So we're running this event as part of the Building Resilience, Building to COP26 event that these guys are running this week. So anyone who wants to find a little bit more about these guys, a little bit more about what they're doing this week, they do it every year. Go and have a look at their site. Highly recommend learning a little bit more about what they're doing. So within the UK specifically, in July 2021, this year, the government has announced that the NHS trusts have been invited to bid to build 8 new hospitals in the UK. New sites will transform NHS services and help level up for thousands of people across the country. It's going to form the biggest hospital building programme in a generation, which will see 40 new hospitals built across the UK by 2030. Another great link, and I can put all of these links into the chat when I'm done with these slides, is the actual NHS Buildings website. That's just been launched a couple of months ago, and you can find out everything that the government are doing, that the NHS are doing to build towards a more sustainable construction piece when it comes to the new builds that they're going to be planning to build. Saying that, right now, as everyone knows, there's a huge dichotomy between the estate of the NHS buildings right now. You've got, for example, Heartlands Hospital, which is part of Birmingham Trust. It's going to be built. It's going to be built in the next few years, and it's going to be built to the highest construction of environmental standards, and it's going to be using sustainable features such as that huge solar array on the roof, as you can see there in this artist impression. They're aiming to be BREEAM excellent. Building status has a requirement to be sustainable, which they're set to achieve with that huge solar PV installation on the roof as well. So this is the future of what sustainable NHS buildings are going to look like. But as we all know, this isn't this isn't what everyone deals with on a day-to-day basis. This isn't what everyone within the NHS. It's not this amazing thing that everyone gets to work in. We still have hospitals, for example, like St. Bart's, which was it was founded in 1123. Obviously, St. Bart's doesn't actually look like that anymore. It looks a little bit more like this, which is this beautiful, huge retrofit that I think that Skanska did a few years ago. So they have obviously retained that beautiful listed facade, but inside it's actually this huge, beautiful, sustainable, energy efficient, really modern building that's comfortable, and it's great in terms of energy efficiency, as well as for the staff and the patients there as well. It's not easy for us to be retrofitting into old buildings. Something as simple as putting in a smart meter into a grade 2 listed building isn't the easiest thing for us to do. So as much as we can have the plans to build out these huge, amazing, eco-friendly hospitals, we still are always going to have to be dealing with the estates that exist now, and having to think about how we can be really, really innovative with how we can retrofit new tech to those really old and rightfully, beautiful buildings that we have in the UK. So with that, and I'm going to pass over to our panel that we have today, who I'm really excited to introduce to you. The sort of conclusion to the points that I'm trying to make here is that we need to look further than just the efficiencies of the new or even the old estates. We need to start drilling down to the entire supply chains. And when we're talking about those raw materials, when we're talking about the way that buildings are built, when we're talking about the way that things that can be done, not just things like solar, but right down to every single piece of material that goes into a building, we need to ensure that sustainability is at the core of the decision-making process at every single step of the way. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to pass on to some people who are far more versed than I am in terms of things that go into buildings that are going to be making things a little bit more efficient going forward. So first I'm going to introduce you to Matt Paskin of Whitecroft Lighting. Matt, I'll let you give yourself a bit of an introduction and go straight into your presentation, if that's okay.
No worries. Can you hear me okay? And can you see that presentation, Mo?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, yes, welcome everyone. And yeah, my name is Matt Paskin. I'm the Marketing and Product Director for Whitecroft Lighting. Our background, just briefly here, is we've lit a lot of the hospitals in the UK over the last 10 years. So it's really interesting to see Georgia talk about Barts there. We'll come back to that in a bit, because we've actually lit that twice over the last decade or so. But yeah, we are very good at, and have been very good at, delivering very efficient new build hospitals. But what I want to talk to you today is a slightly different arm of what we now do that primarily started with the NHS, but has taken us into looking at the decarbonisation of the existing built environment. And what I really want to get across here is also our ethos, as in you're going to hear me talk a lot about bringing it to a circular platform. I'm not against decarbonisation. It's a buzzword and it's on everyone's lips at this point in time. But for me and for us at Whitecroft Lighting, if you apply a circular mindset, you almost get decarbonisation for free. Yeah, we've been playing at the energy game for a long time, and we're trying to think a little bit more holistically and longer term around that. So let's kick off. First things first, I think it's really important just to sort of set the scene in terms of sustainability. What we've realised over the last 2 to 3 years of getting heavily into circular economy solutions and thinking about decarbonisation is that just quickly, when people think about sustainability, they pigeonhole it, very probably because of people like me and marketing of the past, into it's all about the planet and trees and so forth. And what we will be talking about today and really advocating is getting a balance between these three things here. And in particular, we're going to be talking about, the social people element, as in a hospital is a fantastic space for this in terms of not only the practitioners within that space, but also the patients and what they're trying to, well, basically why they're there and what we're trying to achieve with that patient. But also then, we're going to look beyond that and about prosperity, local supply chains. So we're going to be talking about social value to the UK, but also material health and thinking differently about where you take that on. So I think it's really important as well, any of you guys listening, I guess most of you are plugged in because you're probably up on the deal in terms of understanding sustainability, but I'm amazed just how many people don't bring it back a step at this sort of level. So let's dive right into some case studies then and where we've come from. I'm not going to spend ages on this slide, guys, because it really does sort of describe where we've been. And I guess the top level takeaway here, the good news is the NHS, in my opinion, are well ahead of most. Certainly, Georgia mentioned Barts in the Royal London, Peterborough, Huddersfield. These are all projects that we've already been to, lit, and actually been back and relit from a sort of an energy sort of play. And then South Media is a project that's coming through now. But what's really intriguing when you go back to a space and look to sort of upgrade it and regenerate it is you get some common challenges that come through, and it's really set us on a different path in terms of the way we think about that space moving forward. So obviously the first thing I want to get across to you guys is, and this is that the energy carbon play, right? It's not just all about energy, right? If you walk into an environment and you've got the image there on the top right of a theatre, right? You can't just walk into that theatre and pop a new luminaire in, right? There's all lighting codes, there's practitioners in the space, there's a whole lot going on. So you've got to think beyond just the energy and the carbon saving, you've got to think about the lit effect and what you do. They're also very specialist spaces, but they are pretty much in use 24/7. So actually, you can see why the NHS have got into this early in terms of, it's really intriguing when you think about the downtime of an environment. If you can actually go in there and upgrade the existing asset, it saves a lot of time, effort, and money for the trust they're getting involved. But then thinking holistically again, you can't also just drop a luminaire into a space and not think about the emergency lighting, the existing controls, the DALI, the infrastructures that are already in place. So you really get to a point where actually what you start to learn, and we fell into this trap very early on ourselves as an organisation, if you just rock up and try to save energy, and in many people's vocabulary that means decarbonise, you probably won't deliver the right solution, right? You've got to think about light quality, well-being for recovery, but also the existing services and people within those spaces. So we've been doing this for 3 or 4 years now. And what I want to talk to you about is where we go next and what good really looks like and what has happened in terms of the learning outcomes. And probably one of the key ones is actually setting the right baseline. And what we started to realize was that a lot of people talk about remanufacturing and upcycling and repurposing, but if you approach this correctly, what you're actually trying to do is regenerate the space. And what I really like here is if you actually look at the definition of regeneration, it really helps us lay the scene for our strategy moving forward. But what I'd urge all of you to think about, regardless of whether it's lighting or other M&E elements within the space, but this is the Cambridge definition, but the act of improving a place or system, especially by making it more active and successful. And within that, then I've emboldened 3 of the words that I think are really important. So, improving. I've already talked to you about. I've seen personally some horror stories in the NHS where people have literally just destroyed the lit effect of environments just by swapping out luminaires. Right, just going in there and saving energy isn't going to improve that space. You've got to think about improving the lit effect and the services around it. But then probably the biggest learning is this one: place. It's really easy, right, for the FM facilitator, the maintenance guys to get obsessed with the asset, right? And we probably fell into this early doors as well. You're not replacing the luminaire. You're actually replacing the lit effect within that environment. And it's been specifically designed to help the staff and the people in that space to deliver their job day to day, but also to help the customer, effectively the patient within this environment, recover and get better quicker. And then where you get to is success. And this has been a really big learning curve for me in terms of making sure you get all of the stakeholders together in these projects to understand exactly what success means. And I guarantee 90% of the time, it won't just be energy and carbon, right? There will be environmental social governance plans and targets at the top end, right through to what the maintenance guys want to do today, and thinking about the products and the solution in the future and delivering it again and again. So bringing all that learning together, where did we get to? And what we're launching this week and what we're starting to do now in a commercial setting and with the NHS is talk about Vitality Relight. And what we've done here is blended together all of our learning around new build and cradle-to-cradle compliant products and decarbonising and getting the material health of existing products right, and trying to then overlay that with the regeneration of a space. And actually, when you start to think circular and really think about it, right, we don't want to create new luminaires for new, I mean, if you've got a new build, right, you've got to create new luminaires, but what the best you can do is go in and regenerate what's already there, reuse that asset and take it forward. But within that, then, there are 3 to 4 things that really play into a successful solution with this environment. And this is the 4 things that I really want to get across to you guys in terms of thinking about this as a play moving forward. So first of all, you've got stakeholder and project driven. And this is the point I was making. You've really got to early doors get into not just the facility manager or the installing M&E contractor, but get into the mind of the patient, get into the mind of the practitioner and the NHS staff within the space and the trust itself. Are we trying to get to zero from waste? Are we trying to get to decarbonisation? Are we trying to think circular? Are you setting this up for being able to improve again and again as the tech and the LED efficacy increases in the future? Really important. But then secondly, you get to this, the space. And I guess I've laboured this point a little bit too much with you guys already, but I really can't get it across to you enough, right? If you focus on the asset, you'll fail. Think about the space. Think about the environment you're trying to regenerate. And then really importantly, any space, right? And this was a big learning for us. Barts was a hospital we lit in the first place, and naturally Skanska came back to us and said, can you relight the space? Well, while we've been doing this, then a lot of people started saying to us, well, listen, they're not your luminaires over here, but could you do something over here? And this is really intriguing because we've now got to start thinking about assets and environments as something that the NHS owns, and certainly organisations like myself and others can quite happily come in here and not just upgrade the space, but upgrade anybody's luminaires within that space. So they're the first 2 points I wanted to get across. We then get to the final 2, and this is really quite interesting as well. Regenerate or replace. And what you find here is, very idealistically, you can get very quickly wrapped up in, I've got to regenerate everything, right? The best thing you can do for the environment is regen. And in reality, in some instances, the corridors, the theatre areas, a lot of the sort of the A-type spaces, the ward environments are pretty easy to regenerate. But then there's a lot of luminaires that have been in the back of house, that have been in plant rooms and stuff like that, and they're pretty harsh environments. So they've been put through a lot, and a lot of them will either be broken or an economical upgrade. And this is where you get that beautiful splicing of vitality in terms of, where we can regen the luminaire, let's get on and do it. Where it doesn't make sense to regen the luminaire, let's replace it with a circular luminaire that starts you again on that journey and allows you to think about products being in a building for life, 40, 50-year horizons moving forward. So, you've got to think not just in the circular terms about the regen, but the replace as well. And then finally, quality assurance. And this is really interesting because one of the, I would put the NHS down as pioneers in this space, right? Because they understand the potential here and what they're trying to do. But you do get a lot of people worried about warranty and quality and where this goes. And what we've now done, learning on the back of becoming cradle to cradle approved for our existing products, we went away and worked with the BSI. And we're now one of the first organisations in the UK to have a kite mark for reconditioning. And the beauty of this now is if you work with us and flow your project through the kite mark process, we can actually not only give you a warranty on the component that we've replaced within your facility or site, we can actually re-warranty the whole product. And then go back to the point I was making on the last slide, we'll actually re-warranty as well other people's, third parties and competitors' products in the space. So really giving you peace of mind about not just the quality and the material health of the components you're getting in this product, but setting you up for the future with a warranty and a person to come back to talk about in terms of that quality. So that's the process. What's next? Obviously, those of you in this space will, I guess the other panelists on here will agree completely, hopefully, is once you turn one of these stones over, right, you find something else new to go after and something really interesting to get into. And I just wanted to give you an insight into a couple of things that are shaping my horizons right now. The first is additive and 3D printing. I think this is incredibly exciting for all of us. And the image I've put on there is Nightingale. This is a very bespoke luminaire that goes into a ward area, sits at the end of the bed and helps the staff monitor a patient without waking them up in the evening. But you can imagine we don't sell thousands of these per year, and they're very bespoke to the NHS, to the healthcare sector. But the black item there, the cowl, the glaring, you can see, typically we'd have tooled that up and had to buy thousands of them that sat in stock. But actually now we're moving to additive 3D print scenarios. And there's loads of benefits here. As in one, it's in the UK, so we're using a UK supply chain. 2, there's no tool, so you've got rid of the carbon there. And 3, we print on demand, so there's no waste. And actually the material is cradle to cradle approved and fully recycled from the get-go. So it's a really interesting way of thinking about new build, but also a lot of people approach us now and say, I really want to do a regen map on this product over here. It's not yours, but the end caps are broken. Yeah, I guess you're going to have to throw this one away. Well, no, actually, we can reverse engineer, CAD up the end cap and 3D print the 3 or 4 you need just to keep that asset in situ. So really quite intriguing where this is going. And then finally, EPDs. I might annoy a few people on the call. When we got into this, we started to think circular, and I got really frustrated with carbon and EPDs because they just talked about what we'd done and where we'd been, not really where we, I could get an EPD for a product that looked at getting the materials out of the ground, installing it and using it, but our product was designed to last for the 40, 50 years of the application. But while what we're starting to do with, again, working with people like OneClick LCA is develop EPD data, so allowing the NHS and others to actually use this data to really understand the impact of luminaires, whether it's new build or retrofit, over 40, 50-year horizons. And it's really quite intriguing what we're doing. And not only does it allow us to plot the building and give you data on the impact of the carbon, we get deeper and deeper into the real impact. And the next thing for me is FR4 and getting that out of our products and the electronics inside there and where we innovate next. So a couple of things that are on the horizon are really quite interesting. What I would leave you with, this is the last slide, is look at the 3 names there at the bottom. So we've got OneClick LCA, we've got BSI and the Cradle to Cradle Institute. The one thing I'd urge you all to do is collaborate. The innovation here and some of the real sparks of sort of intrigue and curiosity that came from this was actually surrounding ourselves with the right people and just learning what to do next. So be curious creators, have a go, don't be afraid to fail, but build those partnerships. Okay, I'm going to stop there, Georgia, and pass back across, but hopefully that gave you all something to think about.
Thanks, Matt. And I hope that was a real light bulb moment for everyone else in the audience. had to give you a bit of a pun there. Awesome, really appreciated your talk there, Matt, and really echoing that whole holistic approach that I had mentioned earlier about every single thing that we do, and it being, sustainability being at the core of the decision-making process. And you're talking about the space piece and just really thinking about the entirety of the picture and not just one little thing. So, and also, something that we talk about quite a lot when we talk about sustainability partnerships, we're not just here for the ecological aspects. We're here for the economical aspects of sustainability for the NHS as well, and also just sustainable ways of working, making people's lives better, making people's jobs easier, creating efficiencies. That's what we're here for, really. It's not just about environmental impact. It is the entire picture in terms of a sustainable future for everyone. So really appreciate all the points there. And if anyone does have any questions for Matt, please put all of your questions here into the chat function. We already have some questions here. Jessica asked Matt about the abbreviations. Could you please maybe you want to tell us a little bit maybe about EPD specifically, if that's one that people don't know about?
Do you want me to do that now, or do you want to wait till the end?
Give us that now, and then we'll go to the full Q&A at the end.
I apologise completely, right? I always get beaten up about this, right? So a life cycle analysis is what you do first. So you look at all of the carbon from getting it out of the ground or the world, getting it to Whitecroft, getting it into a product and getting it to site, and then the in-use phase and the end phase. So LCA stands for life cycle analysis. From that, then, you can generate an EPD, so it's an environmental product declaration for individual products or product groups. And it's essentially like, when you buy a freezer or a house now in the UK and you get given this is how good it is. If I can do it again, my frustration with this is many people are just doing it off their own back. There's no one way of standardizing this yet we've done it to ISO standards, but where we've got to is you become so advanced at this, we're almost having to compare our EPDs with our own EPDs to make it better, sort of thing. But yeah, there's a lot of frailties in the system, but it's growing and coming, but that's what EPD means.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I know that there's a lot of abbreviations specifically in lots of different industries, so really appreciate you explaining that one for us. So I'm going to introduce Colin now. Colin is coming to us from Selector Glaze. He's a sales director there. I'll let you give yourself the introduction, Colin, and take it away with your presentation.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Georgia. Right, let me quickly pull it up. Am I on the right? Can everybody see that?
Yeah, I can see it, Colin. You want to go to full screen?
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, just let me change that around. There we go. Okay, well, welcome everybody.
Colin, we're on your notes slide. You share the other screen.
Oh, sorry, am I on the... Is that better?
That's the one. Thanks, Colin.
Okay, thank you. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for giving up your time for this webinar today. My name's Colin Bignell of Selector Glaze, and I'm the Sales Director for Selector Glaze. This particular presentation is all about secondary glazing, improving the building sustainability and the internal environment. Now, certainly in my experience, and I've been with Selector Glaze a lot of years now, I don't think there's an industry where secondary glazing has not been used really effectively, but this is going to be focused predominantly on the NHS and certainly hospitals and patient care and areas like that. So it's a really important area, and hopefully this will make it a little bit more clearer for everybody. So to give you a little bit of background, who are we? What qualifies us to talk about secondary glazing? Well, Selector Glaze were established in 1966. We're a privately owned family company based in St Albans. We provide specialist solutions right across the construction industry, but we're also an original designer and installer. We work directly for either main contractors or directly with hospitals. So it's entirely up to you, and it's one thing that's really easy to manage. You know, if you're refurbishing a space or you're trying to improve the space in general. So what is secondary glazing? For those that aren't familiar with it, we're talking about a fully independent window system installed to the room side of the existing or primary window. So we're looking at something that can reinforce the window that's already there. So how do we actually do that? Well, the frame comes along, so where your cold drafts are coming in, maybe dirt, grime, whatever it might be, depending where they are, we actually put a frame behind the existing window to operate in the same way, so you can still gain natural ventilation, but it improves it acoustically, thermally, and security wise. So, as I say, what are the main reasons we use it? Well, it's a cost-effective and sustainable alternative to replacing the windows. Now, when you're managing a hospital, it's very rarely you'll take a whole building and you'll look to replace all of the windows or whatever. Quite often you're doing it it might be ward by ward, operating theatre by operating theatre, area by area. And the beauty of secondary glazing is because it doesn't affect the primary windows, you can completely refit an area inside the building and add secondary glazing to improve the thermal performance, obviously, and the sustainability and comfort of that area. So, yeah, that's really important. Where it's used a lot really is in listed buildings, because of course you can't easily touch the primary windows. But it's worth saying that any hospital that was built more than 20 years ago, even the double glazed sealed units won't achieve the levels that we're looking for thermal insulation today. Certainly high insulation, low E glasses really only came into effect around about the year 2000. So anything before that, U values will be sitting around about 2.7, 2.9. The introduction of secondary glazing with a low E glass, you can actually get that down to 1.9 or even further. It really depends what you're trying to achieve. So, you know, that's really important. But listed buildings, particularly if you've got drafty sash windows, the dirt and grime that comes in, so keeping that area cleaner, warmer, safer, it really can help. But we can also deal with vulnerable windows, and there's a number of reasons why these might be vulnerable. You can have expensive equipment in there. They might be on the ground floor facing a road where you're concerned about people within that building. It could be mental health facilities. So dealing with those without having to change the primary window keeps the integrity of the building from the outside. Of course, we want to retain the embodied carbon that's already been put within the building. So retaining the existing windows and the embodied carbon footprint of those is a good thing. We're adding to it and improving it. And of course, with secondary glazing, we're generally looking at only single glass. So you've got no sealed units to break down, simple cleaning from time to time, and there's no reason you'll get a good long-term service from it. If you've got listed buildings, I mean, the photograph in the background there is St Bart's Hospital. We've got advocates like Historic England, SPAB, Victorian Society. All of these recognise secondary glazing as a way of dealing with period buildings. And how you manage period buildings is also very important, because there's certain things you can and can't do. So, we keep a close eye on that and make sure we manage it and it's in accordance with the conservation officers and how they want to preserve it. So let's look at where is it used. Well, of course, hospital wards. When you're improving a hospital ward, you want to improve the thermal efficiency of it, the comfort and the environment. We're talking about operating theatres, and strange as it may seem, the operating theatre photograph you see there, that is a brand new St Bart's Hospital. Now, that was used for a different reason. That's in an operating theatre where you had electric blinds behind the new primary windows, but to save having to clean those, replace them, move them around, the secondary glazing seals them in there. It's openable for maintenance, but it seals them in there. So when you do the deep clean of the area, you can do all of that whilst retaining everything in place. And of course, it creates that far tighter environment from air leakage perspective. You've got labs and sensitive areas like that. We can put in obscure glass, and also internal ward screens where we've actually used switchable glass. So you can have electronic obscuration, so you can switch it for obscuration or switch it off if you want it clear. This again avoids the risk of blinds that collect dust, dirt, grime, etc. And of course, mental health facilities. So we use a secure casement system where we can use polycarbonate to protect the occupants in holding rooms. Anti-ligature equipment, all of this is really important. So you can again see the broad spectrum of where this is used across the NHS and certainly healthcare facilities. So let's look at the main reason I think most hospitals will use it is for the thermal performance. We're talking about reducing heat loss and drafts, and sometimes the dirt and grime that comes through help to keep it clean inside, helping maintain the internal temperature so you don't have cold areas or drafts around windows. We want to lessen the ongoing running costs of the area, so by making it more thermally efficient, you can turn the heating down and maintain it at a far better level. And of course, it reduces the carbon consumption and footprint of the building, which is ultimately what we're trying to do. And as I said earlier, it's all about dealing with it in small mouth-sized bites. Secondary glazing is one of those things you can use in one window, 20 windows, hundreds of windows. It depends what you want, so you can manage it within your own financial constraints. But of course, you've also got, we're looking at quieter areas. So where you've got a hospital or areas or wards that overlook busy roads, secondary glazing that's put in for thermal insulation will also add improvements in acoustics. Secondary glazing is the single most effective way of reducing noise through a window. So by introducing a reasonable cavity, you can reduce noise significantly. So it'll provide quiet recovery areas, quieter working spaces, and all of those sort of things, which just makes the environment for recovery and everything so much better. And then we look at safety and security. There are systems within our range that can provide very good levels of security. So up to SR3, if you're familiar with security within areas. So labs, depending what you're using them for, protecting those. Natural daylight's really important as well. So allowing the windows to be available, so not putting bars on them, but actually providing good, secure methods of sealing up the windows. So protecting lab areas and sensitive equipment, and also where you're in mental health facilities, it's anti-ligature furniture, and we put integrated blinds so that they're encapsulated within the cavity, so there's no risk of people getting cords, wires, things like that, that may cause them injury. And of course, patient privacy. So integrated blinds, again, you've not got them the room side, so they're not a cleaning issue by encapsulating them either into a sealed unit in the secondary glazing or within the cavity, allows them to stay out of the cleaning area, keeping it far easier to keep that environment sterile. So if we look at case studies, I mean, a good example, St Mary's Hospital, new build critical care unit. It had modern aluminium double glazed windows, but of course in those sort of areas, sterile environment is really important. So secondary glazing was put in. It has excellent seals, multi-point locking mechanisms on the windows, so it allows you to seal the windows really well. And we use flush locks, so you haven't got protrusions out. It allows you to keep them clean. And of course, as we said earlier, St Bart's Hospital. So in the refurbishment of the new Cancer and Cardiac Centre of Excellence, initially secondary glazing was used when they built the very first stages of the new St Bart's Hospital. They had an existing building where they had to protect the patients that were currently being cared for in that area. So we put in temporary glazing in there, secondary glazing, to not only insulate against the dirt and grime from the building works, but also to provide a quieter environment. So that's a temporary thing. So, and then they decant the patients from that into the new building, and that is really, you know, how they developed that. And then we went on to put the secondary glazing into the operating theatres to create those environments as well. So again, it's used in a number of different ways. Of course, there are, you know, small private clinics in and around Harley Street, where we've in 40th, the clinic in Bentnick Street, where they had a change of use. You've got some lovely period Georgian windows in the outside. Of course, they're a bit drafty, a bit leaky, right by a busy road, so noise insulation, thermal insulation was all really important. So we actually put in side hung casements with a good seal. They had integrated blinds in there, creating a really nice and modern environment inside whilst maintaining the facade. So again, it allows you to do areas of the building without doing the whole building. And we look at Smythe House, which was done a few years ago now, but it was a brand new build, and this was for St Andrews. So we're talking about mental health care, where they needed to provide areas of security inside to protect the occupants. So you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, anti-ligature blind control nods. All of this has to be considered. So when we're designing the units, this is how we've got a lot of experience in this over the years. I mean, to give you an idea, I think certainly this year we've already had 20 hospitals, probably in advance of 20 hospitals that have benefited from secondary glazing for a variety of reasons, whether it's a clean environment, thermal insulation, noise insulation, a combination of all of them, so you can see the variety. And that really sort of covers everything. What I would say to anybody, if you've got any questions, please fire them at us. To be honest, over all the years I've been working on this, somebody's always coming up with a new idea. Can you do this? Can you do that? Always give us a call. Always ask us. We're happy to help. And I'll pass you back to Georgia.
Thanks, Colin. I
Pleasure.
appreciate everyone's time on this morning. So you've got a question straight away, Colin, but I wanted to just make a few comments of my own, just from the talk that you did. I think that what you're saying about the natural light piece, it is really important. It's so regenerative for anyone who's in recovery, but it's also really important for the mental health of those working within hospital environments and in lab environments, like you say, that need to be super secure. But you don't want to be sat under just artificial light all day and never see the sun, especially in winter time when you go to work and it's dark and you come home and you've been
absolutely
all day. So light is just so integral, in my opinion, to just the general mental health piece. So that's not necessarily just the patients, but that everyone working in those areas. So that was really interesting. I think as well, I thought it was absolutely mad to think that buildings built in the 90s don't even have, you know, good enough credentials in terms of the double glazing.
Absolutely, and there's an awful lot of them. Where, I mean, St Mary's, I mean, that's got double glazed aluminium windows. You think, well, that's good, but really, if you look at the performance of them now, they're way behind the curve. Now, you can rip them out and replace them all, but that's a significant cost. And we're going to waste all that embodied carbon that was already in them. They probably function perfectly well to when they were put in. Secondary glazing can be added to completely improve those.
Yeah. And we see those as, you know, modern buildings. It's like, oh, you know, that was built.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's really modern. It's like, actually, it's nowhere near where it needs to be in terms of its efficiencies and that kind of thing. So that's really interesting how quickly things move on, and how innovation is made for absolute leaps and bounds in every single element of just construction and building in general. So you do have a question here from Emma, Colin.
Yeah.
Have you ever used temporary glazing in a mental health environment?
Not in a mental health environment, but there's no reason why it couldn't be, because you could easily do a fixed panel that would achieve levels of security and safety for that person. The type of glass, so probably a polycarbonate, would be used to protect the environment and the person inside. But the likelihood is, if you put in a fixed panel, you know, depends how temporary it is, whether it's 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, it should be perfectly fine in a way of dealing with it.
Okay. Anyone has any other questions, please add them here. I've got one here for you, Matt. It's about the 3D printing piece. So just wondering, you know, you're saying, and you've got that whole cradle to cradle initiative that you're working with as well, and I was just wondering, what when you're doing that 3D printing, what's that composite made of? Is that already recycled materials? Is that something that you mentioned? Oh, you're on mute, Matt.
I can't believe I fell into that trap, hey? Classic. Yeah, so it's so this is a really it's maturing as we get going, but certainly you can get hold of quite easily polyprops, polycarbs and stuff like that. And it's a recycled regrind. I mean, randomly sometimes it comes from stuff like CDs and things like that. So what we spend a lot of time is trying to sift out recycled content that's not just recycled but in the UK. But then you get into, obviously, when you put it into a luminaire, we've got electronics wiring in there and stuff like that, so it has to pass like thermal standards. So, yeah. Ironically, the biggest issues come around the colours, right? Colour matching. So getting recycled material that you can colour match is actually hardest. But what you tend to find, though, and I'm hoping most of you on the call will agree, there's almost like a bit of a badge of honour, I think, to a 3D printed part, as in the fact it looks a little bit rougher and the surface finish isn't as good as an existing injection molding. The fact that it is regenerative, I think helps. But yeah, no, the material is pretty easy to get at. It's still the cost is prohibitive. At volume, it becomes quite difficult. But if you think about a regen in a project, it's pretty good.
Yeah, and especially for just MVPs as well. Yeah, just for, you know, coming up with like new ideas and things, like, you know, for things that you potentially want to build, and maybe en masse you would have to get injection molded, but just coming up with new ideas for things.
It's perfect. I mean, like I said, you can use it for low volume. It's great for regen and fixing products. The other one, though, we've become quite adept at. Like a NHS setting, we had once, we sent some luminaires to site, and the contractor had cut the wrong size hole, and he came back and said, "Hands up, I've messed it up. What can you do?" And we said, "Well, don't worry about it. We'll just 3D print a cowl, stick it in the hole, and you can keep the existing luminaires and the ceiling in situ. Off you go." So it's a really quite clever way of thinking differently. But when you bring it back to cradle to cradle again, though, and the holistic sort of nature here, most injection molded tools are laid down in China, sometimes shipped to the UK to be run. So actually you're bringing all of that work and that social value back into the UK supply chain as well. So it's got real benefits. Yeah,
for sure. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about throughout this entire year and the events that we've talked about is just the carbon footprint in terms of supply chain, and trying to keep things in this country, not for any patriotic reason other than if you can get something from Sunderland and you're taking it to London, that's a hell of a lot quicker journey than coming from China. So Yeah, I really appreciate that point. You've got another question here, Colin. We've got one for you as well, there, Matt, on the same one, about what happens to the temporary glazing panel when no longer needed. And then, Matt, you've got one that's a little bit broader, just about how are you being truly circular. So I'll let you go first, Colin, with that temporary piece, and then Matt, you can have a little bit think about how you can attack the second one.
Well, Emma, thank you for asking that question. I think that's a really good question, because we never really touched on the recyclability of secondary glazing. But the secondary glazing we use, all our own profiles, they're aluminium. Now, aluminium is the second most recyclable product on the planet. So all the aluminium profiles, whenever we remove a secondary glazing unit, bring it back here, aluminium is fully recyclable, the gaskets are fully recyclable, the glass is fully recyclable. I think overall the product is probably 99% recyclable. So there's very little wastage at all. I think there's about 30% of aluminium billet that goes into making it is already recycled aluminium. So once it's originally produced, aluminium is a fantastic product long term. It doesn't corrode easily. It's easy to manipulate, bend, curve. So it's a very versatile material. Hopefully that answers the question.
We'll see if Emma has any other points to make after this. But
no problem.
did you have some time to think about a suitable answer to your question, Matt?
Yeah, no, don't worry about it, Emma. It's a great question. We get asked this all the time, right? There's a lot of, and I think I understand your question is probably coming from the roots of, there's a lot of corporates now, right, greenwashing and talking about doing this and being great. I think the first stall to set out there is we've tried to be authentic all the way through, right? So we could have set off and said, right, we're gonna tell the world by 2035 we're going to be carbon neutral, right? And in reality, we put 500,000 luminaires into the market every year, right? Our issue isn't when we become carbon neutral. Our issue is what we're putting in the market. So we try to approach the circularity argument holistically. So we're thinking about supply chain, we're thinking about material health, and we're thinking about our products. But in terms of truly circular, right? If you're going to install a new product into a building that's going to last for 50 years, we've set them up with, from day one, the material health and the social value of the products is fantastic. They're designed with cartridges with the approach that, in 10 years' time, rather than you throwing that luminaire away, you upgrade it, and you upgrade it in another 40 years, sorry, another 10 years or whatever, depending on, it could be tech, it could be efficacy barriers with the LEDs. But obviously some of that, I guess, I've set in motion the ability for you all to be able to keep that asset in the hospital for 40 years and beyond, right? And we're doing a lot of work with the Department of Education around this now in terms of life cycles. I probably won't be around, right, at Whitecroft in 40, 50 years to see those cartridges come back. But just to give you a little bit of an inkling of what I got really excited about the other day was Vitality talks about you've got to make a product in a circular way, in a local way. You've then got to keep it at its highest utility in situ. So we use wireless controls now and mesh data to get information back from the luminaire. Is it running okay? Is it working? And then you get to the regeneration phase. And we've had a project up in Scotland where we had I don't know if you guys are aware of Cat A, Cat B as a concept. So when you build this isn't NHS, sorry, this is a warehouse. But when you build a facility as a Cat A, you will light it to a set level because you don't know what it's going to be rented to or who the customer will be when it moves in. And in this particular project in Scotland, the customer eventually moved in and they wanted half the space to be an area tool and half it to be racking. Now, they particularly used our product, not because of sustainability, but because of the cartridge. And what happened was they came back to us and said, listen, the customer's now moved in. Can we send back the cartridges, keep the first fix in situ, and can you change out your area optic to your racking optic and send it back to us? And they were purely doing this, right, from a cost perspective. So they didn't have to buy a new £300 luminaire. They could come to us and do the upgrade of the cartridge. So the cartridges came back to us, we took them apart, we put back into stock the bits they didn't need, we refitted the new ones and then sent them back up to them. And for me, that's the start of a really truly circular way to think about luminaires and assets moving forward. So we're not truly circular yet, we've got a long way to go, but we are, I made the point earlier, every time I lift a stone or turn something over, right, I find another 50 things to go and do, but we will authentically and hopefully righteously go about doing it the right way. I don't know if that got too waffly. Hopefully I'll give you an idea of what we're doing.
I think that you've definitely been asked that question before, Matt. So I appreciate your answer there. I feel like it was quite insightful, and I think it's about future proofing, isn't it? And it's thinking about what can I do that will make a difference, not now, but for the next 40 years, as you say.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can get caught up in, I mean, recycling, right? We said early days, recycling is a dirty word now in our organization, right? We don't want to recycle anything, right? We want our luminaires to last forever. And if you change your mindset and think differently, I don't mind recycled content entering the products, but then also I want less in the product from day one. There's many facets to that in terms of the whole, reuse, regen, and the hierarchy of what you do. But if you just see it all as nutrients and think that way, you can really start to change your mindset.
Awesome. We've got probably a last question in here from Jessica Branswood. She asks, do you support trusts to quantify the carbon benefit in terms of CO2 emissions, which we can use to report improvements on our building efficiency? This could include your own manufacturing emissions, as well as we have to consider our disposal. And so this is like a huge question, and it's something that's come up quite a lot with people. The people like Jessica are having to do with reporting. They've got their own amazing games that the NHS has, but the way that we really can make a difference is be able to measure where we are now and actually start being able to report against emissions metrics. So I think that this maybe is a question for both of you guys. If you were to work with someone like Jessica, are you able to offer her some real great numbers that she can add into her report that she has to pass on?
Do you want to go first, Colin?
Do you want to go first?
No, you carry on, Matt.
Right, so yes is the answer, right? But probably not in the way you think we can, right? I would be talking to you and advocating a partnership or just collaborating with you on it. So we are now off looking at our carbon neutral timeline, and obviously you get caught up in the initial what you produce on site, your EV vehicles, and we've gone completely renewable electric now and stuff like that. The harder one to get at actually for an organisation like ours is that sort of the part 3, part 4 emissions in terms of your product and where it comes from and stuff. So when you do cradle to cradle now, I have full transparency of my whole supply chain, where everything comes from, the carbon embedded in it and everything. So actually for me now, to overlay that with parts 1 and 2 and our own emissions as a business, it's relatively easy. I mentioned one-click LCA. What I would advocate is using them as a way to help us model your building and what you're doing. So yeah, we can definitely look at the impact of your building, but also we will be able to start to give you the impact of us as the products as well. But obviously that EPD LCA approach is looking at us. It's everything. So it's coming out of the ground, getting it here, getting it into the building, and then looking at it. And this is the important bit, not just looking at it over a 10-year throwaway, being truly circular in the EPD data and looking over a 40, 50-year horizon, and then it coming back to us for reuse again. So a slightly waffly, long-winded answer. There is no right or wrong way of doing it, right? It is still a little bit sort of in the air and based on best estimates, but yeah, we could certainly support you.
Awesome. I mean, I was super interested in about you guys being innovative in terms of being data first. It's not necessarily always the type of the industry that you work in to be like, okay, let's talk about what type of data we can pull. And I would be able to talk to you for ages about your data modeling, potentially like predictive and stuff like that. But that's maybe for another time, and it would take over the entire session. Colin, let's hear from you in terms of your.
No, I would definitely mirror Matt's comments on that. All businesses now need to be sustainable, and we're certainly looking at being a carbon neutral business in everything we produce. EV vehicles, we've recently had PV put on the roof to help support energy. We've signed up to the Planet Mark, which is something we've now been a member of, I think it's about 3 years. And they look at the whole sustainability model of the business. So from our perspective as a business, that's our objective in every possible way we can. The measurement from putting within a building, this is something I think that's moving. I think Matt touched on this. This is a little bit of a moving target about how it's measured in every building. And the kind of data and information that you're going to need. What we can do is we can tell you how much energy it's going to save. So on a window, we know the U value, so we can tell you you're going to reduce your heat loss through that window by this amount. We can give that sort of data and support on that. But of course, the mechanisms are often things like BREEAM. We've contributed to a number of projects where they've achieved BREEAM excellence with a secondary glazing product. So it kind of shows where it can go. It's what sort of metrics you're going to need and how you want to justify it. But we're happy to work with any client on that as much as we can.
That's great to hear from both of you guys. I'm going to have to close it off because I've got one final slide that I need to show before we finish the session. So let me just get this up right now. It's basically what we're up to for the rest of the year. We've got an event in a couple of weeks' time on the 12th with our partners at Inenco, private and public sector approaches to sustainability and carbon reporting. So these guys are so embedded in carbon reporting and all of those types of things for the private sector, and that they're going to share loads of information about that. So that might come back to that carbon reporting question as well that we've just sort of gone over with these guys, and all the different facets of such a massive piece that everyone is sort of having to deal with right now. So please come along to that one if you're interested specifically in that reporting piece. On the 28th of October, we then have the Climate Change Summit. This day is going to be 2 webinars. In the morning, we're going to hear about climate change issues, things that are regarding the people who work within the NHS, and we're still looking for anyone who wants to collaborate with us on that from the NHS, so anyone who wants to talk about specific issues that you're dealing with, things that you think are going to be coming up on the horizon over the next few years, more than happy to have anyone who wants to speak on that event. And then in the afternoon, we're going to have people from companies like we have done today with Colin and Matt, who are potentially going to talk about ways of actually combating those issues that are brought up in the discussion in the morning session. We still have the NHS Sustainability Awards. So these are open to both trusts and private companies. We've got 2 separate category lists. So anyone who is interested in putting themselves forward for an NHS Sustainability Award, please visit sustainabilitypartnerships.co.uk and put yourselves forward for that. It's not a hugely long process, and we're interested in getting sign-ups from anyone across the entirety of the NHS in UK. And then in December, we have the NHS Sustainability Partnerships report. So this is going to be everything that we've learned from the entire year, all condensed into one handy, interesting report. We're looking for contributors, we're looking for people to interview, we're looking for anything that we can do to make this a really robust and truly appropriate document that we can then send out to everyone who's on our mailing list for sustainability partnerships. So that's us for the rest of the year. We're also trying to put together what we're going to be doing next year in 2022, which just seems like a crazy thing to say, but that's where we're going to be, not too far away. So thank you for nothing else that I really need to say, but thank you so much to Matt for your insight, your great presentation, and to Colin as well, everything that you've shared with us today, everything glass and aluminium, and everyone who's turned up to the webinar. I know that there's actually an NHS cycle event going on today, so everyone who wasn't able to make it to that, really appreciate that you've come and joined us today on this session. There will be a full recording and write-up on the NHS Sustainability Partnerships blog, which will be going live over the next couple of days, and please feel free to follow us across social media as well. Without anything else, thanks so much again to the panel, and have a great day and a great weekend.